The wonderful masterpiece, Mononoke Hime, it is re-releasing in the Americas in 4K IMAX. I thought 4K was just great, and IMAX is just great, but 4K IMAX, mind-blowing. Uh, my wife, who is the best, she took me to the cinemas on opening night, and I got the chance to rewatch this movie. I first saw it when I was in seventh grade, and so it's been a very long time, and it's been 25 years or so since then. But even when I didn't watch it for the second time, I still remembered many parts of the movie. So the movie was memorable already, but on the second watch, I had a lot of I thoughts about how wow this movie is just really Buddhist. So I wanted to make this video to talk about how the Mononoke Hime, the Studio Ghibli work, is really has a lot of Buddhist references in it. So we first start with our protagonist, Ashtaka. Ashtaka is kind of like a god tier character, right? He's a goat. Maybe that's why he rides a goat, right? Not really a goat, but anyway, dude is crazy. He's handsome and he's got a good build, and he doesn't even use a saddle. He rides, with just his core strength, shoots arrows that decapitates people. Crazy stuff. But there are lots of references to his path that kind of alludes to Buddha's life. So, for example, the first one is how Ashtaka cuts his head off as he leaves the village, right? So this is very reminiscent of the Buddha renouncing the world by cutting his hair. And at that point, he declared himself, Ha, now I am a monk. Now I am a monk. I am free from the bounds of life. I have renounced the world. So that's one aspect of how Ashtaka is very similar to Buddha. The second thing is how Ashtaka understands the void of everything, right? When we live life, we tend to think like, this is a pen. This has to be a pen. There's no way this can be anything else. But, if I'm in a self-defense situation, this can be a nice weapon for me to defend myself with, right? So, just like this, everything is contextual. So Ashtaka understands this, so he got this necklace, right, from someone he cared about. And he, of course, at the moment of receiving it, he says, this is a precious thing and I will keep you in my mind. But later down the line, this thing needs to be used as a weapon, so he has no hesitation about giving it to San to be used as a weapon. Because he understands fundamentally that everything is contextual. Moreover, he he goes through a lot of pain, right? Because his arm is cursed, and there's a lot of pain, like it's burning sensation. Also, all the people that he wants them to live in peace, they all want to kill each other. They all want to fight, and to him, this has to be a very frustrating experience, right? On one end, I'm like, yo, guys, please stop fighting. And then they're like, ah, fuck you, I'm gonna fight anyway. So this has to be kind of a disheartening experience. But the thing is, he goes through these emotions and physical sensations, but you never really see him suffer. You never really see him regret his choices. You never really see him contemplating, could I have done better? Maybe, why did I do that? Right? So he understands the pain and he experiences emotional, like things that happen, but he does not suffer at all. And this is another trait of the Buddha, right? He sees everything, but he also sees that none of these things are reasons for him to suffer. And that is a very strong Buddha-like characteristic that Ashtaka has. Also, Ashtaka, he never lingers. So Buddha, he traveled a lot, right? If you've seen my pilgrimage, I went to a lot of cities, and then I told you like this is where Buddha did X, this is where Buddha did Y. So Buddha left his home and then went to Bihar, where Bodh Gaya is, and then he went there, but then he didn't linger at Bodh Gaya. He went travel all the way up to Sarnath, and then after that he went to Gaya again to convert the Kashyap's, and so on. So this is the journey that Ashtaka also takes. He starts out far east, but then he travels west, and on the way he stops at some towns, but then he doesn't really like stay anywhere. He keeps traveling to west, and near the end of the movie, right? He meets not only a girl, but he also meets a love protagonist who he shares a lot of experiences with. But instead of being like, "Oh my god, I can't live without you," so now I'm gonna give up everything. I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna live with you. I'm gonna fucking have kids with you. He doesn't do any of that, right? He's like, "Yep, I like you. You're great, but at the same time, I understand our situation can be variable, so we will keep encouraging each other." So he has no lingering. And he's not crying about it. He's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna miss you so much." Oh. There's nothing like that. Because why? He knows that none of this is a reason for him to suffer. So, also, Ashtaka has no fear. My favorite Buddha quote is, "The Tathagata has no fear." So, when you are the Buddha, when you awaken, there's no fear because there is nothing that you don't understand, because ultimately fear comes from the things that you do not understand. Fear comes from the unknown, but Ashtaka understands the grand cycle of things, right? So, he's shot in the fucking abdomen. He's like bleeding out, which is I think also another reference to Buddha, because Buddha passed away from gastrointestinal infection. So, he's shot, but he doesn't care. He's very okay. He sees the possibility of him dying, but he does not stop in his steps. So he keeps on walking and walking. That's exactly what the Buddha did as well, right, in his life. And he also just, when he needs to fight, there's no like, "Oh my god, oh, I'm gonna kill this guy," or like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna shoot this arrow." No, he clearly knows what to do with the bow, right? But he has no, especially even when it's a close one-to-one combat, he never shows any fear because he understands in battle what's gonna happen. Either you're gonna, be incapacitated, or I'm gonna be incapacitated, and in the worst case, we both die. And like in some other cases, you might die, I might die. But he understands all of it because that's how battles usually go. So this grand understanding of things, and at the end, right? He's the one to offer the head to the dear god. But who knows? The dear god may be pissed, right? So dear god doesn't care who did this, but like, "Oh, you fucking humans, I'm gonna kill all of you." Dear god could do that, but he doesn't care. He's not afraid. He's not afraid to fight. He's not afraid to sacrifice himself. He's not afraid of anything because that is his Buddhahood. So these are the references to his like Buddhahood. But also, I think what's worth mentioning is Japan, right? Japan has two prominent branches of Buddhism, and one is Pure Land Buddhism and one is Zen Buddhism. Pure Land Buddhism is largely about praying and praying and calling out the name of the Amitabha Buddha. Amitabha Buddha is the Buddha that will come in the future. So Shakyamuni Buddha is the Buddha from the past, but Buddha coming from the future is Amitabha. So no matter how much of a suffering we have, no matter how much of a crappy life we live, as long as we believe in Amitabha, and as long as we keep calling his name after our passing, Amitabha will save us. That's sort of the Pure Land Buddhism in a nutshell. Zen Buddhism is all about meditation and inner awakening, right? So while both are branches of Mahayana Buddhism, they are not strictly the orthodox, quote unquote, orthodox Mahayana Buddhism. But what's very interesting about Ashtaka is actually a very good demonstration of a Mahayana Bodhisattva. So, what is a Bodhisattva? What is a Bodhisattva in the Mahayana context? So, this is a little bit of a Buddhism trivia, but in Buddhism, there are largely two schools of thought. The first, well, there's more, but for my convenience's sake, I'm gonna classify it as two. One is Theravada Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism, I think, is the majority of Buddhism, and this is the popular in Southeast Asia. So the Thailand monks and the Myanmar, Cambodia, the monks, the that you think of wearing orange garment, uh, they are Theravada Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism is all about the conservative approach to Buddhism. Listen to every word that the Buddha said, study it, and follow the Buddha's teachings to a T. So they are very conservative, and they are very good at following the rules that the Buddha set out. But the important thing in Theravada is individual awakening. Yes, it is good to be of benefit to the society and everything, but if you are not attaining Buddhahood, if you are not the Arahat, then you haven't met the goal yet. So the ultimate goal, first and foremost, is reaching the Arahat status. Mahayana Buddhism is, of course, interested in the self as well, but Mahayana really encourages you to look outside. It encourages you to play the role of the savior in the world around you. Instead of waiting for the Buddha, instead of just thinking about yourself, it asks you to have the heart. It asks you to be willing to go out into the world and be the Buddha-like person. So, what makes a bodhisattva different from the Buddha? The Buddha has left the world of consequences and suffering. The Buddha is when Buddha died, we call it nirvana because nirvana is the final detachment from suffering that comes from being bound to a body. Because yeah, Buddha, he got said goodbye to suffering a long time ago, but he's still hungry. He still gets sick. He still gets injured, right? So these are the ailments that come as a part of living inside of a body. But through his death, he attains nirvana, right? The final freedom from suffering. Bodhisattvas, on the other hand, they can do that, but instead they choose to stay in the realm of suffering. Why? Because all the people that need to be saved are in the realm of suffering. So if I've gone away, I'm kind of leaving other people to fend for themselves, which of course they can, right? Because Buddhism is all about opening the door to individual awakening. But, right? What if some people are having a really tough time getting to that state? Mahayana Buddhism asks bodhisattvas to remain in the realm of suffering, which sucks, right? It asks you to voluntarily stay in the realm of suffering. Why? Because we understand the mechanic of suffering, so we can withstand it. And we can take on the suffering that other people would have received if it means we can save this person from suffering, right? That kind of pay it forward spirit is the Mahayana Buddhist way. And the people who participate in that lifestyle is people we like to call bodhisattvas. Okay, so there is a story about what being a bodhisattva really means in the Flower Garland Sutra or Avatamsaka Sutra or in Korean Hwaumgyong. So when you look at this sutra, there is a mention of 4 worlds. And each of the worlds, the goal for the people is the same, to play in water. So in realm number 1, people go out and play in the water without really preparing for anything. They're just blinded by oh my god, there's water, let's play. But water can have strong current. Water can have strong tides and waves, right? So they get injured or they drown. And then they're living in remorse. Oh no, this water is such a cruel thing. I hate being in the water. Why did I make that decision to come here? Oh. And they suffer. This is realm number 1. Realm number 2, people are a little bit smarter. So they are like, you know what? When you go to the water, there's a possibility that you can drown. And you can get injured. So you know what? I'm not gonna go. So in realm number 2, they just don't take the benefits because they don't want to pay the cost, which is rational, right? Realm number 3 is, you know what? We want to play, but there's always a risk. So let's prepare for that risk. So they make a really big boat. So they make harbors and things like that to contain the water, and they can enjoy it. So this, you understand the mechanics of how water works, and you do something about it so that you can take the benefits of it, right? So realm 1, 2, 3 have one thing in common. And one thing in common is that drowning and being lost at sea is bad. But in the fourth realm, the realm of the Bodhisattvas, it doesn't matter. Because why? If I'm floating and if I'm having fun, it's good because of that. If I'm far away, it's good because I get to explore. If I'm underwater, that's good because now I can explore undersea and see what's there finally because I never got the chance to look at it when I was on the ground, right? If I drown, then it's good because I ate fishes, so like it's good that I get a chance to pay them back. So that is the mind of the Bodhisattvas. We get into bad situations, but we gladly see it. So we can sometimes participate in activities that invite suffering, but that's not a problem for us. And that is the ultimate mind of the Bodhisattva, right? So now that I explained the concept of the Bodhisattva, the important thing is, okay, so what does this have to do with Ashtaka? Well, Ashtaka is largely a pacifist. He doesn't want to kill. But when the situation calls for it, he doesn't hesitate to kill. And when he does that, he doesn't cower. He doesn't run away from his responsibilities. So, hey, you know what? Yes, I did injure some of your people. So if you need to question me, let's go ahead and do that. Hey, I understand. I did some fucked up things. If you want to be angry at me, I understand. So Ashtaka is gladly willing to pay the consequences for his action because he understands the reason why he did that. And he doesn't seek to only get the benefits and not pay the cost. He understands that for him to reap the benefits, he has to pay the cost, and he is willing to pay the cost. So, he engages in negative karma of killing, but again, he doesn't shy away from the consequences. So, in the beginning of the movie, right, after he shoots the boar god and then gets the curse, the village oracle tells him, your arm is cursed, right? And this is irreversible. But there's a line that he says. He said he was determined for that possibility the moment he drew his bow. That's a very important thing, right? So he's not mindlessly engaging in a hunt. He understands the consequence that comes from destroying of the bow. And he does not run away from his responsibility, which is what a lot of the characters in this movie want to do, right? Another big trait of the Bodhisattva is that they are willing to drop their perspective and see from another person's perspective because they do not insist. But the thing is, hey, I'm fighting for nature, right? But I'm a pacifist. These guys, they want to burn down the they want to burn down the forest and they want to turn everything into like forest. So if I don't drop my pacifism, ironically, that makes it more likely that we have to fight. So what does Ashtaka do? He willingly the in the subtitles it says unclouded eyes, right? How can you have an unclouded eye free of negative judgment if you don't see things from the other person's perspective? So he enters the village and he eats with the men to see how the men think and act. He works with the women at the forge to see how the women act and how the women feel, how the women, consider everything. Eboshi is a seemingly bad person, but he is willing to talk with Eboshi and listen to her perspective. Right? Same with San. So, he, in one sense, you can see that, man, this guy has no opinion of his own. But that's precisely the most difficult thing about living a peaceful life, right? Because why? We always want to insist on our worldview because we all unconsciously believe that we are right. But Ashtaka is always open to the possibility that he is not right. He may be biased. So he is willing to dive headfirst into another person's perspective. And he doesn't fear, oh my god, but what if the people hate me now? He has no interest in that. He doesn't care about that. Why? Because he knows what is more important at stake because he transcended the individual view of the world where only I matter. He understands the dependent arising and he is looking at the greater system. And he is always encouraging people to think about that for themselves, right? Which is why Ashitaka asks a lot of questions. Means he never tells them, "Hey, don't do that." Like, well, he does. Like, don't fight me. Like, he encourages people to not fight them. But when it comes to ethical decisions, he doesn't say, "No, don't fucking do that, you stupid." No, he's not like that. He's like, "Is this necessary? Can't we coexist in peace?" He asks that a lot so that you have an opportunity to think about it. And these are the traits of the Mahayana Bodhisattva. But another Mahayana influence that I found very, very interesting is there is a book called, not a book, there is a sutra or like a text called The Awakening of Faith. And in the Awakening of Faith, there are mentions of two minds. One is mind as suchness, and one is mind as phenomenon. That's the English translation, but when you look at the literal translation of the Chinese to Korean, basically the version I know, it is translated to gate of suchness and gate of life and death. The dear God, when I first saw this movie at 7th grade, I thought it was a confusing character. This guy seems like he's the god of life, but because why? Like he revived Ashitaka, right? But why did he kill the wolf god and the boar god? That's confusing, right? So what I didn't understand at the time was I viewed life and death as separate entities. But the truth of the matter is that life and death are one. Just like how steam, water, and ice are all one in different states, right? You cannot be dead unless you have lived first. There is no way you can only have life and no death. Life and death are one. So, when you look at the world, when you look at life from the life and death lens, it is very highly likely that you will suffer. Why? Because things dying, it sucks, right? And when things are born, when babies are born, we like to celebrate it, right? So we're constantly in this world where something good happens, something bad happens, something good happens, something bad happens. Why? Because we don't see that they are actually one. The important thing is, from our perspective, when our dog dies, it's a sad thing. But how many ants died today? We don't know. If the death of one life is sad, shouldn't others be sad as well? So why does life weigh differently? It's because of how zoomed in we are into a particular instance of a life and death, right? But when we zoom out and out and out and out, humankind have existed for 50,000 years or more. How many people have died until now? We don't really spend our days thinking about that and being sad, right? Because from the Earth's perspective, people being born and death is just the same as a breath. We inhale and we exhale. Oh my god, that was the end of that breath. Are we sad about that? No, right? It's just a phenomena that happens as we progress forward towards time. So when we look at the deer god now, we can see that the deer god is the god of life and death. It's not separate. It's not the god of life. It's not life of death. A god of death. It is the life of death because that is the oneness. And this is a very Mahayana Buddhist concept, right? It's encouraging us to stop looking at the, binary and dichotomy of life and death, but instead it asks us to look at the oneness of everything and see how we all are interconnected. And lastly, Ashtaka, with all of his, awakening and things like that, he is still interested in lifting his curse, right? So, the curse is like a mark of hatred. And I think it's a very good indicator of how Ashtaka is willingly entering the realm of suffering. Because, again, why? Because he is a bodhisattva. He is an awakened one who is willingly staying in the realm of suffering to bring about coexistence, to bring about peace, to bring about the relief of suffering from others, even if it means he is going to suffer. So this is a very 10 out of 10 movie for me. And some side notes about the movie are the sound is amazing. Like when I know the movie, right? So I know that the protagonist doesn't die. But when the enemy shoots the bow, like the sound effect is so real. For a moment, you feel like the character is actually in danger, even when you fully know that the protagonist never gets like arrowed ever in the movie. So cinematography wise, because of the 4K IMAX, it was the subtle expressions of the characters' faces that was very visible. Although I think some of the omitted details when the animals move in far away perspective, I think that was a little more extra visible, so it made us few scenes a little bit funky. But hey, it's the charm of 2D animation, right? Um, and lastly, we always seem to want something until it actually happens. So in the Iron Forest, right? They all want to burn the forest down. They all want to have the strongest, forge. They all want nature to not be around them. They all want to build like a city. But when the god loses the head, and now everything is turned to ruin, everybody's like, "Oh, but isn't that what you wanted? Now there is no forest. Like like 30 minutes ago, you shot the gun at the apes so that they would stop planting the tree. So isn't that what you wanted?" So that really goes to show you the film's core question. The things that we live in pursuit of, are they even things that we genuinely want? And again, that is such a Buddhist kind of a question to ask, right? So, with that, I think this is a 10 out of 10 movie for me. It's been out for ages, so I did spoil a lot of the movie. But hey, if you are available to watch it's in your area, I would highly recommend watching it. Again, keeping in mind all the Buddhist references.